my purpose at this point is to introduce to you all a real estate advisory group known by Stewardship Realty that has in fact been working with the Presbytery and working with the Board of Trustees for a couple of years now, ever since I've been the chair of the board. Haiko Cornelissen and his partner Dan Panitz were first introduced to us by Bob Fultz Morrison when they were working with the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island. At that point, they operated under the corporate name of Realty, Episcopal Real Estate of Long Island. So both as Realty and as Stewardship Realty, they have advised, spoken to, and have counseled not just the Board of Trustees, but also several of our churches. I know that they've worked with some success with Astoria. I know that they are working right now with several other churches, including Second Presbyterian, and they are in discussions with North and several other churches. They have presented to us in the past. There was a webinar that they hosted where they spoke to us concerning some of the issues that we are facing here in New York City. So the main thing I would like to say about them is that instead of being a real estate advisory group that's trying to understand issues that churches have, and especially churches in New York City, they are in fact homegrown New York City people who've been working with churches for many years that also happen to be real estate advisors. So with that being said, I'd like to turn over this portion of our meeting to Stewardship Realty.
Thank you, Elder Nathaniel, and thank you all. So nice to see some familiar faces and some new. I'm here together with, so maybe I should first of all say, my name is Haiko Cornelissen. I'm the principal at Stewardship Realty. I'm here together with Dan Panitz and Marty Piazzola. We have prepared a small presentation that we wanted to share with you, what we are able to provide the various churches. And we also wanted to share with you something that we have been talking to, especially Nathaniel, about some opportunity with New York City and asylum seekers, and what some of the churches may be able to do for them. So what I wanted to do is share with you my screen, share with you our presentation that we have prepared for today. So Stewardship Realty, building ministry and church futures. That's our focus. Our focus is solely on churches and expanding and creating a ministry and church futures that are healthy and sustainable. As mentioned, we are the three partners. Then I started at the Long Island Diocese, where we were in charge of 130 plus churches. We were dealing with 20 developments. But what we've seen at the diocese and also at the church level, and also with many other dioceses that we have been working with in the New York City area, is that there has been a decreasing attendance over the years. And this is a trend that has been ongoing since the late 60s. Together with the decreasing in attendance, the finances of the churches has also come down. And as a consequence, it has been increasingly difficult to make the budget work. And one easy way to make the budget work is to defer maintenance of our buildings. This is a great way to save money because it can be extremely expensive, and you won't see much of that within a few years. But after a few years, and especially after decades, you'll start to see the consequences of deferred maintenance. And the repair of them will be extremely increasingly expensive the longer you wait. And so we've seen some disasters happen. One church in Brooklyn, for example, the church tower collapsed and killed one person. The longer we wait with our deferred maintenance, the more expensive it gets. And so one strategy that we have seen being used is that if congregations are near each other, they can merge. The one building would be sold, and with the proceeds, the other can be renovated. But if we were to do this every time there is a renovation, a church needs to merge and sold, it creates a pattern where at the end of the century, there would be no churches left. And this has major consequences, not just for our churches, but also for our communities. I myself am part of a church in Jackson Heights, Queens, and we have adopted another church that closed down. And the members of the church are still talking about it as if someone had died in the family. And so what many of our churches and dioceses are doing, therefore, is building some time of reflection, some discernment. And we capture this in the Proverbs. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. So churches have been re-questioning, is this the right way to deal with our buildings, to do stewardship? Are we able to leave an inheritance to the children's children? And so that's where we have come in. Stewardship Realty was created to transform church real estate from a liability to an asset, from income draining to income producing to fulfill God's mission. And so we help church leaders like yourself and the congregations to understand the value of its real estate. We advise them through the complex process of real estate development and leasing. We help churches build financial sustainability for ministry through the creative development of their assets. And over the years, we have created a process that we use to accomplish this. And everything starts with a vision. The vision that we are defining is basically happening at the intersection of what we call the Trinity bottom line. Most important of that is the mission of our churches. Sometimes a mission of the church is already existing and requires expanding. My church, for example, in Jackson Heights, before COVID, we served about 85 families on a Saturday. Today, we are serving 350 churches or 350 families. And so the food pantry needs dramatic expansion. We're thinking here about the future of the mission. So this is not like what does the mission look like in 1 or 2 years. This is really for future generations and the near future. And it could be an expansion of the current mission, but it could also be a new addition to the mission that is done at the church, because the mission may need realignment with the needs of the community. So once we get a good understanding of what the mission is, there's needs that come with it, financial needs, but also spatial needs that are required in order to accomplish the mission. And then third is constraints, especially zoning constraints will tell us what can and cannot be done. And once we have all three, at the intersection of all three is where we're able to create a real estate vision. The second step is to do an analysis. We always do a missional analysis where, based on the local demographics and the local data, we're able to create get a better understanding of what the needs are of the community. We also create a real estate analysis where we dive into the rents and comps and all the real estate needs that are within the area. We also talk to politicians and get a good understanding of the legislative initiatives and how the vision of the church fits within that. So once we have a vision and analysis, we're able to create a strategy for the real estate and the mission. There's typically 4 strategies: a ground lease, a joint venture, readaptive use, and ASYLUM. This is an example of a ground lease that was done at St. John's the Divine. This is actually where Marty has worked on. Maybe Marty, you can add some detail.
Sure. So this is, as Haiko mentioned, at the campus of St. John Divine. Most of you, I'm sure, know about it up at 110th Street in Upper Manhattan. They have a large campus and undeveloped property, and they went out to the market to find the appropriate developer to build what you see there is a multi-story, multi-family rental project. And it was structured as a long-term, meaning 99-year ground lease, where St. John the Divine had fixed income, if you will, for that duration of the lease, until such time as they wanted to, again, monetize, and asked Avalon Bay, who was the developer, my former employer, to buy the property and provide a large cash infusion to St. John the Divine. So it was really a good example of a win-win situation for the church.
Second strategy, the joint venture strategy. This is an example in the Bronx where the church, a beautiful church that wanted to renovate the existing church and create a affordable housing development around it in order to help finance the renovation of the church, as well as the ministry and church operation. Another example of a joint venture structure is where no buildings are kept, and a completely new structure is being created. Like you see here in yellow, the community space and church space are being created on the ground floor, because this was an aging congregation where providing easy access to community and church spaces was crucial. On top of it, a residential 100% affordable housing project was created in order to help finance the church and the ministry of it. There's also readaptive use, a church that cannot be used as church anymore, that has to be closed, can be used in different ways. This is a conversion into residential spaces for a beautiful church that we wanted to keep. So once we have the vision, the analysis, and a strategy, we're able to execute on the vision. We wanted to share with you a few case studies where we can show what that means for individual churches. And this is a case study in St. James, Queens, where we want to maximize the highest and best use of the property while expanding the ministry of the church. The church and the ministry space are on the left, and in the back is a cemetery, which created another challenge for us to maximize the use of the property. And ultimately, we ended up with a 150,000 gross square foot project, 136 residential units, affordable units, that allowed us to expand the ministry by providing affordable housing of this congregation. And we also integrated the cemetery in the back by adding a sort of contemplation space to the local community. Another example is St. Bart's in Brooklyn, where we also tried to maximize the highest and best use of this property while expanding the ministry of the church. And this is a landmarked church, which created a tremendous challenge. But in addition, next to the Episcopal Church, there's also a Seventh-day Adventist church. So we were, the goal was to do something and improve the ministry and the health of the churches, of these two churches. We see the landmark area that is here. We were able to work with landmarks and remove some of these structures that were built after the original structure of the church was created, which allowed us not just to bring back the original glory of the church structure, but also allowed us to maximize what could be built. And so in the middle, you can see that's where the beautiful landmark church is, and the maximized gross square footage is happening all around, that is supplying income for the ministry and church upkeep. Third example is St. Matthew's in Brooklyn. This is where Dan has worked on.
Essentially, if you see the lower part of the screen, St. Matthew's Roman Catholic Church was in dire straits financially, but they had property. They were asset rich but cash poor. Cross Street was a dilapidated, unsafe rectory, parish home, and school. We worked out a development plan where we built 82 affordable units across street from the church, and also we leased the property for retail tenants and the parish hall on top of the building itself. In this project, not only did the church receive a cash infusion to develop the affordable housing units, but they also received lease payments for 99 years for the use of the retail properties.
And last example, last case study is the Church of the Transfiguration. This is also where Marty has worked on. Marty.
Yeah, so this is the Church of the Transfiguration located on East 29th Street between 5th and Madison Avenue. This is a landmark church, and it had an asset in the form of unused air rights that they were able to monetize by transferring it to a development site, including, so the whole property was a landmark with the exception of the parish house, a 50-foot wide parish house. And so what we did as developer, we purchased those air rights and purchased the property on 30th Street and created a development site where we were able to utilize those air rights from the Church of the Transfiguration and replaced their parish house with a brand new parish house of 5 stories and built a 55-story tower in the on top of, if you will, on top of the new parish house.
And so we combined all our experience related to churches and non-church, and created Stewardship Realty to provide 4 different types of services: development partnership, project management, portfolio analysis, and asset management. So in the case of a development partnership, we partner with a diocese or a church. We create a vision for the portfolio as a whole. We're able to provide upfront revenue if needed, and if possible, if we do, for example, a 100% affordable deal, you're able to get the land value out of the deal and use that for other means. And then finally, we will be developing properties together with the diocese. We also provide project management, where we create a project vision for an individual church. We send out an RFP, a request for proposal, to find a development partner to a large network of equity and development partners. And then we help with the contract negotiation. If we are not happy with the proposals that come out of the request for proposals, or if we think the church is able to get a better deal, then we will submit a proposal so that the church has the opportunity to work with us as a development partner. We also provide portfolio analysis, where we look into the missional and real estate potential of individual churches, and then create a strategy. We also provide asset management services, where we help with the new construction management, with leasing, owners representation, and brokerage. So we are working with many different dioceses throughout the Northeast, Episcopal diocese in Rhode Island, Connecticut, the New York diocese. We've been working, as Nathaniel has mentioned, with the Presbyterians, Pentecostals, and we're New Jersey, Washington, D.C., and also Maryland, which is actually where we currently are. And what's everything starts and ends with is with the mission. We are empowering and creating strategies or real estate strategies that empower the mission of the church. So whether it's community programs, homeless shelters, affordable housing, food pantry, everything starts, the vision starts with that, and the end product is designed to empower that initial vision. And therefore, we wanted to also offer to the churches an opportunity that we have been talking with the New York City. New York City is looking for congregations that can offer space to temporarily house some of the many asylum seekers that have arrived in New York City in recent weeks. And so what we want to share with you is one but very specific example of how the real estate can benefit the mission and vice versa, because the city will provide lease income to the churches in order to create spaces for the asylum seekers. Then you wanted to add something?
Yeah, to add to that, it's congregate housing, temporary housing, until the asylum seekers receive permanent housing. Most discussions, if not all discussions, involve not only providing this much needed service to these poor people, but also a rental income to the individual churches. But the city of New York, if they move forward, will provide renovations, management, security of the property itself until the lease is terminated moving forward. It's a much needed service. There are thousands and thousands of asylum seekers out there seeking housing, and we hope that by presenting this to you, that you could offer some assistance to these people.
And with that, we wanted to allow you to ask us any questions related to what we just shared with you, related to real estate development, but also to the opportunity to house some asylum seekers if and where possible.
Thank you for your presentation. We have a question first in the chat from Elder Lisa Wright, and then we have a hand raised from Elder Jim Nedelka. Lisa, do you want to speak your question, or would you like me to read it?
You could read it.
So Elder Wright asks, is your firm comparable to that of a development consultant company? Does it provide the same / similar services?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for that question. The answer is yes. We provide similar services, but our main focus is ministry and churches. So what we want to emphasize is that any strategy is always revolving around mission and the vision of the mission for each individual church.
And maybe just to amplify, we exclusively work with churches and parishes and dioceses, with no other types of real estate transactions or development.
Thank you. And we have a hand up from Elder Jim Nedelka. Jim?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm from Avenue Church, NYC here in Manhattan. In the past 20 years, I've had a lot of experience working with churches as far as development projects go. And always the key issue is affordable housing with various formulas from 80-20 market to affordable, even down to 60-40 or 70-30. What is your philosophy about the split on affordable housing versus market rate housing? And in that context, how much of the properties are devoted to retail, ground floor retail, when brick and mortar is disappearing, as possibly and potential office space as well? Thank you.
Well, I'll start off by responding, and thank you for that question. We provide a property analysis report to make a determination of what could be the highest and best use. And sometimes, not all the time, we look at multiple uses if the zoning permits it. And that allows us the idea or the concept, if you will, to make a better determination. And then we present it back to the church or back to the diocese, determine what's the next step of a property development. So, but really, it's dictated by the zoning. We don't make that decision. The zoning is going to basically tell us what we can and cannot do. And so we really can't have that crystal ball and come up with that response. In regards to 80-20, 70-30, it's your guess as good as anybody else's. Waiting for Governor Hochul to come around and provide some type of affordable housing plan for market rate properties. But we are very much involved with affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, senior housing, 100% affordable housing, from 135% AMI all the way down to 50% AMI.
And what I like to stress also is that we are looking at all the options. We look at 100% affordable. We look at market rate, which means it's a combination of, as you mentioned, could be 20% affordable and 80%. And we look, so we look at the various options, and then we present that to the church, because ultimately it's not us who decide it, it's the church and the church leadership that decides. And so whatever works best for the finances, for the missional future of the church, is what the church will decide.
I want to add 2 points too. One, we're working very closely with New York City Housing Preservation and Development at the senior leadership level, commissionership level right now, on identifying appropriate sites for affordable housing. There's a desperate need. There's also ways of trying to seek financing to construct these properties, if you will, through tax credit investment programs and so forth. So we're very much involved not only in the private sector, but also in the public sector of affordable housing. But I want to point out with affordable housing, part of our job is to make sure that the affordable housing project doesn't put you in the red. When we were at the Diocese of Long Island, we inherited messes. We inherited affordable housing projects that were not benefiting the population that was living in the building because they were poorly constructed, or the Excel spreadsheet for the pro forma was just really a bunch of fluff, if you will. So part of it is not just, well, let's just do affordable housing because it sounds good. Let's build affordable housing because it helps a population, but also ensures that the church or the diocese that's administering that program isn't in the red, that it's breaking even, or it's able to sustain itself throughout the term, if you will, of the project.
And your buildings were designed as not-for-profit situations, or were they commingled with for-profit entities within the same structures based on the zoning?
Both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a request that you add your contact information in the chat so that folks can reach out to you, or should they reach out to Nathaniel at the Board of Trustees? I'm not sure, Nathaniel, how you want that communication to go.
I think it's really up to the individual churches. They can obviously reach out to Stewardship Realty directly if they want to reach out to the Board of Trustees first. If they may have some gating questions that we may be able to help them with, we're also happy to entertain their communication as well.
Very good. So Stewart Realty, if you don't mind adding your contact information to the chat for those who would like it. And then we have hands raised from Reverend Barbara Felker and then Reverend Thea Reggio, in that order. Reverend Felker?
Good afternoon. Thank you for this presentation. I'm Reverend Felker from the Hollis Presbyterian Church in Queens. And I had a question. I think someone just touched on it. I wanted to know, how does this affect our tax exempt status, in particular with the asylum seekers housing?
Yeah. So in regards to, because you're a nonprofit and you're providing housing to this population for the city of New York, it shouldn't affect your nonprofit status at all. You're providing, it's part of your mission, if you will. You provide congregate housing, which is considered a non-for-profit type of service, if you will, community service. What we do in many instances is we have an accounting firm that we work with that we can refer you to ask that question if you ever want to go down that road, or we could ask that question from the accounting firm that specializes in this. In regard to non-for-profit status, in regards to your tax situation with property developments, it just depends on the type of property development that There may be a situation where you may want to be in a market rate property development if the revenue is very good and it's benefiting, the mission ministry. That the LLC, that's the entity that we create, generate enough revenue to pay the property taxes, we move with it.
My other question, with affordable housing, would senior housing and affordable housing fall into the same category, or are they two different?
If it's a not-for-profit, you'd be exempt from the property taxes.
Thank you.
And next hand up is Reverend Thea Reggio. Thea?
Thank you. Nice to see you, gentlemen. Thanks so much. It was a great presentation. As with all presentations, I know you had to be somewhat selective. So I just want to say that in my experience talking with you, you're extremely creative, and in the sense that not all churches have the same footprint or needs. I found that you're very open to that. So with the adaptive use, for example, the example that you gave was a reconfiguring that was complete. But I've also had conversations with you about shared adaptive use, so that churches being able to continue to use their space, but you're being able to bring some creative thought to how else to use the space in addition to worship or current practices. So can you just speak to that option a little bit?
Well, it's really a dictation of the, it's a function of the zoning. Many times we're presented a property and you got to figure out what to do with it. So we go back to the zoning text, or we go back and have a conversation with city planning or economic development corporation and figure out what are in the area. And once we have all that data, a full understanding of what can go into the church, it's permitted, it doesn't affect your taxes and status, and that there's an actual need. When there's a need, then there's a demand. There's a demand, there's sustainability for income. And in addition to that, it benefits the mission itself. So, for example, we had a property in Valley Stream, Long Island, and when we were there, we were commissioned to sell the property by the diocese, but we actually looked at the zoning. We actually met with economic development, we met with planning, some broker opinion valuations, and we realized there was a massive need for charter schools and Montessori schools in that part of Long Island, if you will, more Montessori than charter. Well, we were going to sell the property for $1 million, but because we did the research and we were creative, identified that we could generate a rent at about $300,000 a year, and we executed a lease for 10 years, triple net, which now generated about $3.4 million for the diocese, rather than just selling the property for $1 million, and that money would have been gone. So now not only do they have the $3.3 million over 10 years, but now they have money that they can put towards mission and ministry. That money can be managed, can be invested, can be put into endowment. But there was also options placed. There's a very good shot that that school will continue, which was a creditworthy tenant, that school will actually renew the option or kick off the option to continue the lease itself. And to boot, it also paid for a lot of the renovations of the church, which was very helpful. Is that an example, Pastor?
Yeah, that's a great example. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Stewardship Realty. That will be the last question, but perhaps the Presbytery board, in conjunction with the Board of Trustees, set up a webinar where this can be discussed more fully. And they did put up their contact information on the screen, so we hope everyone received that.
I'll also enter it in the chat so everyone has it.
So,
okay, great. Thank you.
you.
All. This was wonderful. Well, as I said, we'll enter our contact details in the chat, so you can always reach out to us. We're more than happy to set up a webinar specifically on this subject. But I just wanted to thank you all so much. Thank you for your time. So wonderful to see everyone and meet some new faces. And yeah, reach out to us anytime. More than happy to answer any questions.